Hey YouTube, welcome back to Project Give a S.H.I.T. Tyler and Christian here to talk the election, which is here. It's here whether we want it to be here or not. There's a lot of insane things that have been going on this election cycle. And as Newt Gingrich said, this will probably be the most important election since 1864. And for those of you who don't know, that was the Civil War, and that decided the fate of this country. So those are some pretty heavy things we are dealing with here. And we're here to make our predictions and kind of to discuss just the chaos. So out of the gate, Christian, do you have a prediction for who's going to be president after the election this year?
No, no, there is no way to tell at this point because of the corruption and the bureaucracy behind what's been going on in the DNC and the RNC for the last, 16 years. It's pretty brutal, man. 20 years, in fact.
Right.
So, yeah, ever since Bush, man, it's kind of up in the air. It's pretty hard to say. Bush, there was a fraudulent voting and votes actually thrown away in Florida, which gave the election to Bush. And then with Kerry in 2004, there was lies told about him in the military, and even though he was a veteran, there was. And then McCain, same exact thing. He was a veteran, and then they tried smearing him. I'm not saying that any of these candidates were good, but there's always people in the shadows throwing a fork in the wheel of every single candidate. And so you never know at the end of the day who's going to be the one that comes up top. I mean, there's been some people who predict it. I don't know how on earth they do it. It's psychic, maybe. Who knows? But what do you think, Ted? I don't know
I
how I don't know how they predict something like that. Even if you're savvy as hell,
mhm.
complete science. Pretty cool.
Right. Yeah, I completely agree. It gets harder and harder every election cycle to predict because I feel like the parties get more and more emboldened with corruption. I can never pronounce her name. Imam Omar was caught ballot harvesting in
Her first name is Ilhan,
yeah,
Ilhan. It's
Ilan.
it's a cool pronunciation of a foreign name.
Yeah.
I hate that they are making Muslims look bad through her. That kind of sucks.
Well, yeah, she makes herself look bad completely, and social media completely burying certain news articles and certain perspectives on the internet, and emboldening and increasing the volume of other perspectives. And it's kind of uh, made a really strange perception on our current sitting president, as well as um, perception of the current Democratic opponent. And it's really hard to tell because you and I are so in this political bubble, like we're so informed, um, and just to see the amount of opposition towards like what is true is quite exhausting.
Well, truth is relative to each person's perception, so it's probably the best way to explain it is not true, but reality. There. I guess that would be, I guess, the best way to put it. Reality is definite, and in this situation, there are certain things that certain candidates are doing that are being completely overlooked, or there are certain things that certain agencies in our government are doing that are absolutely illegal in every way or unethical in any way, and they're still being done. Uh,
Yeah.
so that's where the seed of the tree of the problem is.
Mhm. Yeah, and actually, you reminded me of a Biden quote. He said, um, "Don't." don't believe in fact, believe in truth. It's like he actually said that on the campaign trail in like uh, May or June or whatever. It's one of his many gaffes. But something that is really encouraging to me is even with this amount of bias and a lot of the shadiness and a lot of the attempts to blame our sitting president entirely for the deaths due to this virus. Uh, Today in Colorado, of all states, which is blue, there was a 30-mile long parade for Trump. Last week in Los Angeles, there was a 6,000 car parade for Trump.
Yeah,
Um,
that was cool.
and in a very important swing state, Arizona, there was a 90-mile parade. 90-mile parade, 20,000 cars.
Unbelievable. Did you hear about what happened in Texas?
With a running
There
the
was an
bus.
entire parade that surrounded his bus,
Mm-hmm.
and they
Yeah.
canceled their tours there. I mean, that's bravo, Texas. Bravo, Texas. From California to you, man. We give you props, dude. Man, that's what's up. And they were all in lifted trucks, too, dude.
Mm-hmm.
They were all just blasting. Man, can you imagine? Oh, man, it was a sight. It was a
Yep.
sight.
Yeah, but what I will say about that is the press afterwards was saying like, "Oh, Trump supporters, you guys claim to be the victims all the time," and meanwhile, I don't, you guys saw my other video on this channel. In San Francisco, people are getting their teeth knocked out for holding a government sanction approved and through all the proper channels peaceful protest. And in terms of running off the road, that's kind of a false statement. The bus wasn't ran off the road, the bus just pulled over. If you want to talk about running off the road, in Riverside 2 days ago, there was a Trump parade that had like a Prius just drive into them, and it's amazing. It's like any
Big
little.
big shot. Hey, big shout out to all those moronic Prius drivers out there. There's a lot of them. There's videos about that, man. There's Reddits about it. It's hilarious.
Goodbye, my almost lover. Goodbye, my hopeless dream.
Yeah, so I'll go ahead and throw my prediction out there. I think tomorrow, or which for guys of you don't know when we're recording this, the day of the election, we will not know who the president is, um, due to all the corruption going on, and it sucks to hear that if you're supporting either candidate, and it's really why if you go to a lot of downtown areas in these progressive cities, they've boarded up all of their downtown areas because they don't want uh, violence to break out. Um, Also, the White House 2 days ago built 21-foot tall fences in front of the White House in anticipation of people trying to climb the fences and everything. I think the only way we're gonna get away with a clear victory tomorrow night or the night of the election is if there's a huge landslide victory of not only the electoral college but also the popular vote. And for our current sitting president, it's hard for him to get the popular vote because of um, such a large amount of people living in areas like Los Angeles and New York City. But I personally feel I'm 50-50 on it that there there could be a landslide popular vote because in the last debates, it Biden made himself very clear. He's the pro lockdown candidate. Trump made himself clear he's the pro open up candidate, and I think that is the defining uh, idea in the election this year. Is people want to open up their businesses, they want their kids back in school, they want life back to normal, and this election, I think, was all about that. And in a week or however long it takes to count all the votes, I think. our current sitting president will be standing back in the Oval Office again.
It's a prediction of a non-event.
It's a prediction of chaos is going to
I
happen.
can predict that we will never have peace in our lifetime. I can predict that. That's
Yeah, yeah, but extra unpeaceful. And New Jersey stated today that they will not be counting their in-person votes till a week after the election, so it'll be on time with all of their mail-in votes. So there's an entire state that's delayed with the
wow, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's for sure. We won't know until next week, at the latest, or at the soonest,
Yep.
earliest.
Yep. So what states Trump's going to take? I think Trump's taking Florida. I think he's taking Pennsylvania. I'm saying I think he's going to take Arizona for sure. I think additionally every state he took in 2016 he's taken again. So he has to, for a clear victory, excluding even popular vote as an idea, he has to take 2 more states in the electoral college in order for it to be a definite victory.
Personally predict he's not going to win Arizona, only because recently, and that's what I was going to talk about. Recently, they've become very Democrat, very liberal over the past few years since McCain left, and due to that, a lot of the policies that Sheriff Joe Arpaio used to promote, a lot of the policies that their Republican governors in previous years used to support are now being kind of like put as secondary priorities behind social justice work. And so I'm not sure. I mean, yeah, there's a large contingency of Republicans there in that state, of course, still, but it's changing. And I saw the change in the last election pretty badly because there were states that were previously Democrat that weren't Republican, and then there was a few Republican states that went Democrat. But this was one of them. Arizona was one of them, and let's see if I don't know. Let's hope that you're right, man. That's all I can say. I do think he's going to take Michigan. That's for sure. They're pissed off over there with regards to the lockdowns. And
Whitmer.
Wisconsin,
Mm-hmm.
Wisconsin, and Minnesota, they're all behind Trump in that area. I believe they're all behind Trump. But we'll see, because surprisingly, in the last election, I believe it was Wisconsin. It was during the midterms. They went pretty Democrat. Correct me if I'm wrong, though. That's what I'm looking up right now. But that, from what I remember seeing in the news, it was a stark change because over the years, Wisconsin has always been quite moderate to conservative. Of course, it's a farm belt state, but I don't know. I mean, a lot of the Black Lives Matter movement originated kind of in some of those parts of that region of the country, and so there might be a brainwashing taking place, and we don't even know because it's local television that runs most of the propaganda now. It's not just the mainstream.
Yep.
The mainstream controls local, so a lot of people don't realize that local TV is just a couple of people that that live around the corner. If you're in a small little polka dot town, 1,000, 1,500 people, but they get their marching orders, man. It's so pathetic.
Yeah.
It's just like in that movie you and I were talking about, The Network.
Mm-hmm.
Which, if you haven't seen it, people, you should check it out. It's mind blowing, but it's from the 1970s. It's 1976 film.
Sidney Lumet.
It's an eye opener.
We know things are bad, worse than bad. They're crazy. It's like everything everywhere is going crazy, so we don't go out anymore. We sit in the house, and slowly the world we're living in is getting smaller, and all we say is, please, at least leave us alone in our living rooms.
Man, because although it's told kind of in the beginning as kind of like a jest of a film, it becomes very dark and ominous because we are now in 2020 and looking back then to the 1970s on how this man, particularly the journalist or the TV anchor who's the star of the film, came out and basically back then called out the bull for what our media really is. And all it is the propaganda business machine spinning a negative narrative so that people could continue to watch and continue to pay and continue to eat from that media trough, which continued to pay the money and pay the bills for all those millionaires that were advertising and getting kickbacks through government contracts. It's crazy, and this is in the 1970s as a Hollywood film.
Yeah.
And if there's something that you and I should ever talk about, it's just that. It's how Hollywood somehow not predicts, but is on the same wavelength as future governmental and public events. It's crazy.
Well,
Have you noticed?
ready for your mind to be blown. V for Vendetta took place in 2020. You remember
Oh,
what?
shut up. Really?
Yeah, the thing that started the whole 1984 lockdown of England was a virus.
The government was responsible for the deaths of 100,000 people. You really want to know?
Okay,
But
so
I was told by many people in my circles, political circles, to watch it because it was very relevant, but
yep.
I didn't see it. So
You don't watch
tell us in the audience. No, tell us, man.
Okay. Well, it's, the mask, the Guy Fawkes mask, the throwing knives. Anonymous uses his mask. So if you recognize the Guy Fawkes mask with the really sharp chin and the really big nose and the mustache like that, with the hat like Anonymous wears, that's from V for Vendetta, which is referring Guy Fawkes, which is from a guy who tried to bomb Parliament in England in like the 1800s. Guy Fawkes Day. If you're in England, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And that's actually coming up. That's this week. It's like November 6th or something. But V for Vendetta is about the distant future when, or not the distant future, the modern day. It took place in 2020. But it was made in like the early 2000s. So it was a prediction of a potential apocalyptic world where you couldn't talk bad about the government. And if you did, uh, you were disappeared. Like what countries like China do nowadays. But it was
Or like what the Secretary of State under a Democrat president would do. Or like what
yeah,
or like what the first lady of a Democrat president would do. I mean,
yeah,
we really
yeah,
want to go down that rabbit hole. Let's look at Clinton and how she's very relevant to that. How you just get disappeared if you go on the wrong side of a person's.
right. There were some of her staffers who spoke out against her who ended up not alive anymore. One of which death by suicide with a bullet in the back of their head.
Seth
Uh,
Rich, God rest, God rest his soul.
yeah, yeah. But about V for Vendetta, yeah, what's scary about it is even in that movie, Related Network, there's a scene where uh, a, like a TV host on like an interview show talks bad about like their prime minister. So then the cops raid his house. And what's so eerie about this right now in Australia, we can talk about this in another video, but you can't have a social media post negative about government. Otherwise, they come and arrest you. Famously on YouTube, there's a clip going around of a pregnant Australian woman who was taken into custody because she had a negative post about the Australian government. So they locked her up. And
Was this in Victoria, Australia? By any
yeah,
chance?
exactly. Right.
Yeah, it's bad there. I don't know why or how on earth there's a certain one city in particular in a country that could be more Orwellian than most. And that's scary, man, because those people that live there are living in, God, I don't even know how to explain it. They're living in fear. They're living in isolation. They're living in,
Right. And we're going to talk about that more in our video. We're going to do another video we're going to do on this channel. So link for that in the description below. But about what you were saying earlier about television networks, it's completely accurate. They get all their national news stories and often their international news stories from the top. The way a news station works is you're sitting at it. There's reporters, producers, and writers, and what they're doing is day of the news cycle, morning of they're writing stories together to have it all delivered by the evening news. But they're not writing national news stories. They're not writing international news stories. They're writing all the local news stories. all the national and international news stories that come in are coming in from the headquarters of the network they're a part of. So like Fox News, your local Fox News has nothing to do with cable Fox News. Your local NBC, your local CBS, and your local ABC News, all of their national news stories come from the top.
The company is keeping its employees safe and healthy.
The company is keeping its employees safe and healthy.
The company is keeping its employees safe and healthy.
The company is keeping its employees safe and healthy.
It spent $800 million on increased wages and overtime pay during the pandemic.
It has spent $800 million on increased wages and overtime pay during the pandemic.
It has spent $800 million on increased wages and overtime pay during the pandemic.
The audacity. The audacity. I mean, it's the audacity, dude. These people, they actually think people are dumb enough to not do cross-checking. And we know that as a fact because they have these fake fact checkers like censoring everyone, including the White House, which where the f were they during the Bush years?
Yeah, you have to do a lot of bleeping
where
here.
were they during the Bush years, man?
Oh,
where were all these dumbasses during the Bush years? It's remarkable that,
where were they during Obama?
They're so,
And Obama.
Well, yeah, I mean, Obama, they were already falling behind him because he was Democrat, and they were Democrat, and they just wanted to make sure that they were falling in line. Period.
Right. Yeah,
and
but that's a good point you bring up, though, about Republicans and Democrats. This is about Trump specifically. Although Trump has been loose with his rhetoric, he hasn't been nearly as dishonest as previous presidents. And also, Donald Trump is the first president to not go to a war with another country since the 1970s. So
isn't that crazy? He's also the first. He's also the first president to only take $1 as his paycheck because legally he can't not take anything. He can't, and he wanted to defer entire payment of his salary so that he can just work for free.
And
he got that idea from Dr. Ron Paul in 2012 because that was his idea. And Trump copied a lot from the Liberty Movement and Ron Paul's campaign to win this last election in 2016 because he's a businessman.
Yeah.
He's smart. So he knows how to follow trends and market value and public sentiment. He knows exactly what to do. So during 2008 and 2012, he was analyzing and researching and monitoring everyone running, and he picked a lot of Ron Paul's stances to run on: anti-war, government corruption, freedom, protecting soldiers, bringing them home. Man, I mean, like, not taking a paycheck. He did. Those were all Ron Paul's platforms in 2008 and 2012.
Yep.
Imagine that.
Yep. No, you're not wrong. But one thing I definitely appreciated about Donald Trump is, like, he followed through on a lot of what he said he was going to do. Not everything, but that's a good example of why I was disappointed in Obama. Like I think you share this sentiment. One of the most important things I find in a presidential candidate is how peaceful they are. Because I'm very much anti-war. But Obama, I got kind of liked because Obama said he's going to pull out of Afghanistan and Iraq, and it wasn't until Trump that he started really doing that. Obama, of course, if you want to talk about that president, he bombed a lot more countries than Bush did, and But one thing that people see, which is unfortunate, is how their rhetoric is, and it's sad because Joe Biden is trying to ride on the coattails of Obama, and he's trying to be like, I'm the peaceful guy, I'm the good guy, I'm the not racist guy, and it's like, dude, look at your history. The '94 crime bill put more black people in jail than any other thing in modern history, and people tend to cite Trump as this racist, but although he has said some things that might be moderately interpreted as racist, nothing near to the level of Biden. And I think most notably, if you don't know who you're voting for come this election, if you don't vote for me, you ain't black. And that's just how do you like not lose the black vote with a quote like that?
And that brings us back to square one, the media.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yep.
how
Yep.
single-handedly, Benjamin Franklin established this fourth, quote unquote, fourth branch of government, this fourth hidden branch of government to check the political abuses of our country, not be a part of the political abuses of this country. So just in that sentiment alone, when you look at what Benjamin Franklin did, he did it to waken up the society, the citizens, the citizenry, so that they can make their proper decisions as to whether or not to join the militia, or whether or not to hide out, or whether or not to aid financially in the support of the rebels, the terrorists. By the way,
Yeah.
we were terrorists before.
Mm-hmm.
1776. 1776.
Oh well, I mean, but unofficially, the American Revolution started a couple years earlier. But for our audience to understand, specifically, you're talking about newspapers and journalism. Benjamin Franklin was an integral part of starting newspapers in the United States. And that's actually another thing you bring up, famously, the Hunter Biden story. It was released by the New York Post, which is a newspaper that was started by Alexander Hamilton. And it's the longest running uninterrupted newspaper in our history. Yet they get blocked by Twitter by posting an article about the son of the Democratic opponent of our current sitting president.
The only thing is I don't like Alexander Hamilton.
Understandably so.
He was really the central figure behind central banks in this country.
Right. And that's
so that guy. Sorry. I mean,
gotta watch your
sorry.
language. You're giving me more work with every time you drop an F-bomb. I have to go and cut it out. But
sorry
it's understandable that you aren't a fan of Alexander Hamilton, because he was quite the opposite of Thomas Jefferson, who is one of my favorite founding fathers, and I don't like that about him personally. But there are some good things he did too. But regarding the New York Post, the story getting blocked, perfect example of blatant favoritism. In 2016, everyone's talking about how, like, oh, these Russian bots came and like influenced the election, and Donald Trump won because of Russian bots. But the solution for election interference isn't let's come and do more election interference to give another party a huge advantage. Like the Hunter Biden as an example, that's like people hear like, oh, it's fake news, and then they don't even look. But if you look into it, it's way worse than he's making money from foreign affairs. There's like child pornography on his computer and everything. And
but do you remember even Tucker Carlson said this? I think Tucker Carlson said this, or some major media figure said this. They said if the government, Edward Snowden said this. Sorry. He said that if the media really wanted to, during the Joe Rogan Experience interview, he said if the government really wanted to get you, they would just plant porn on your website, and they could do it in a heartbeat if they wanted to get somebody in trouble, and then say, hey, look, that guy's a bad guy, don't vote for him. And see, that's where the whole personal liberty, civil liberty, privacy protections comes into play in this country. Mm-hmm. This is why I admire Edward Snowden, because without knowing what the government is doing, all this corrupt deep state is up to is compiling an entire data trove of people's bad behaviors, just in case they ever in the future decide to get into the public eye and change things for the better, so that they can then say, okay, no, see, this is a bad guy, don't listen to them. And that's called divide and conquer. That's called marginalization, and that's called complete control and manipulation of a government and its people.
Right.
It's sad. And
Yeah.
that's what it comes down to, bro. That's what it comes down to in the end. Like, this is why personal liberty and privacy is important, because it's not because we're all doing something bad and we want to hide it. It's because one day, one person will make a mistake, and then that'll be used against them if they ever come out against someone in the power structure who wants to squash this little bug before they get big. It's really that simple.
There's also another extreme danger of such a breach of privacy is what a country can do is like what's going on in China now is your social credit score decides whether or not you can travel between provinces in China or get on a train or if
That's
you
insane. That is insane, dude.
yeah.
And can you just imagine those who, that is Orwellian. And that actually is tied to the 5G blowout. And since China beat us to it, because that was considered what I heard to be the next space race, it was the 5G race. Who would make it there faster, whether it was Russia, United States, or China? That's crazy. China beat us to it. They've got their entire country networked out like that. And so now a lot of our governmental officials and business officials are actually trying to copy China so that they can get there just as fast as they did, so that we can get there just as fast as they did. So it's all a sad competition because they're worried that China is going to outpace us in the 5G market. And if they do that, we're financially and economically screwed. Now, the only problem with that is that we were on track to do a 5G network that was more privacy centered before. And now that China kind of surpassed us due to that surpassation, or due to that passing of us, we are now having to copy their road to 5G. And then their road to 5G was a more Orwellian road, which was retina scanning and to enter buildings, voice pickup to hire a taxi drivers, things like that. And that's not what we want in this country, man. Because if you're walking down the street and there's a computer or 5 computers or 25 computers scanning you and your son's face as you're walking down the sidewalk, there's something so sinister about that, that if people don't see that, that's the fear that I have. It's not that it'll happen, it's that people won't care about it.
Additionally, too, with the whole Hunter Biden story, Hunter Biden, aside from the whole Ukraine stuff, is getting a ton of money from China because he got this an, multi-million-dollar deal high up in the Chinese government. And if you want to talk about Russia's interference with Trump, they made Russian bots. Whereas Biden, his son, gets this multi-million-dollar job with China. China is the biggest geopolitical threat in the world. Mitt Romney was made fun of in 2012 for saying that China was the biggest geopolitical threat in the world, but they absolutely are, evidenced by what's happening with the virus and how the entire world shut down because of what they did. In my opinion, China is intentionally interfering with the United States election because they want Biden in power.
Yeah,
Yeah,
of course.
China has 20,000
I'm surprised. I'm surprised the entire country doesn't know that.
Right.
They can't put 1 plus 1
mm-hmm.
to equal 2. They can't. There's a disconnect because of that dinosaur train of thought where you think of a certain way for so many years
Mm-hmm.
that by the time reality settles in, you're just like, no, I'm gonna walk away. That's not, I don't want to realize that that's the reality because I've been wrong all these years. That can't be. And so that's why a lot of these 70, 80, 90-year-old, 60-year-old voters, God bless them. God bless their hearts, as my Southern friends would say. They're actually what has been destroying this country for the last 40, 50 years, I think. I want to say, I think. And one thing I used to argue a lot about for many years was that I believed that it was the young generations versus the old generations in every election. Because the older generations, let's go down the list, they don't work. They have time. They have money. They're bored. They're bored. So they take a lot of interest in elections. They have a lot of time and a lot of patience and a lot of self awareness. I don't know if that's the right word. They think that they know everything because they're so old. So then they go to the polls to try to push their agenda, which is obviously Medicare for all and Medicaid for all, and you know, a lot of Social Security, and so they push for that. And war. A lot of elderly, for some reason, because they're so worried and they live in a state of fear. A lot of elderly people, because of their weak state or their fragile state or their frail state or their calm state, they feel more secure their nation and their leaders going and killing people in other countries. Not sure why. There's no logic there, but it puts their minds at ease. So in every election, politicians and candidates, they strive really hard to push for that narrative, like, we're going to protect you, old folks, we're going to do what we can for you. And then the young people who don't vote, the politicians don't vote, don't get anything that we or they needed. I'm saying we as if I'm young. I'm not young anymore, but I used to see this back then. What's that?
We're going to be middle-aged.
I'm already there.
Okay.
No, but my worry is that now it's changed. Now it's now actually the elderly versus the young in the opposite way, because now the young are voting with emotional control instead of emotional motive, as it let's say, rather than logic. And the elderly, which have now kind of closed together with the middle class and the middle age, I should say, it's like we're together fighting this millennial group of voters who are pushing for a really strange new world, new norm.
Right.
Call it that.
Yeah, our education system has failed us. Many kids nowadays didn't pay attention in civics, or maybe didn't have teachers good enough to be honest.
I need to disagree, bro. I need to disagree. I think the media generation, the news, or the smartphone generation is what veered an entire generation of people off a cliff of no attention, like attention deficit disorders and depression and what's the word, when someone is abandonment issues, needing issues, you know those kind of things that you see a lot of in millennials, their sense of insecurity. It's a sad state, but the reason why is it's been directly tied to the amount of smartphone use that a lot of these kids have been using, because smartphones, they create depression in kids, they stunt growth, they stunt mental development, they cause brain cancer, and a lot of this stuff, of course, is not proven. But what really is able to be proven, when there's major lobbyists and attorneys and politicians working behind these corporations who are able to kind of do things unethically with their business practices, like tobacco smoke, for example. They can't say, yeah, tobacco smoke is definitively what causes all these people to die, because if that was the case, then they wouldn't be selling it. So they found a way to kind of like cover it up.
They put little text on the bottom saying this may cause cancer,
And so
which
that's
definitely
their disclaimer.
Yeah. Well, additionally, I think a good example too is like fast food. For 20 years, fast food was able to dodge all the and still able to serve really unhealthy food on a mass scale, and it's a big part of why this country has a huge obesity problem. Big corporations with big money, big lobbyists who are pushing against any sort of pressure from any sort of government oversight. And that same problem, as you mentioned, social media. There is some proof out there actually, because there was a study that looked into this that was out of Cambridge, I believe, that was looking at autopsies of children who've passed, and they're finding that the area of social interaction of the brains of children are shrinking significantly compared to years prior to social media. So, I mean, we see it when you go anywhere with kids. They're glued to their phones, um, like anything like that. But me as a media expert, which I can totally say there is a lot of data to back this up. Um, in the mid 2000s, which is right around when Facebook and everything started, the average high school, college age young adult or teenager got half of their media from television and half from the internet. So it's pretty fair and balanced. Now, the average high schooler gets 95% of their media from a mobile device, and most of it is social media. So there's evidence to show that people are spending a lot more time on the internet, and people get most of their news from their echo chamber on Facebook, because they don't really let you outside of your box in social media anymore. That's just what the algorithms have done to everyone. And I think it's also contributed to the amount of violence we're seeing nowadays, where people don't really agree anymore, or aren't able to have civil conversations anymore. And you not only you see it online, but you see it out in the streets, and it's really, really, really not good for this country. And it's allowed this country to maintain a duopoly, where it's a two-party system, where it doesn't matter if you're getting the Republican or the Democratic president. Usually, they're going off to war and sending all our kids off. And as you said, get those 60-year-old voters who aren't part of the draft anymore, because after you're 38, I think it's the year.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you. Exactly. I actually went off on someone in the baby boomer generation. Suffice it to say, a few years back during the 2012 campaign, no, 2014, I believe, midterms, and this person was just diehard about going to war, and they were a Democrat, but they were older. And I looked at them. I said, "Wait, so did you serve?" "No." "Well, my kids served." So okay, so you're trying to like push a bunch of young generation kids to go fight for your insecurity of safety? He's like, "Well, who are you calling insecurity or insecure?" I said, "Aren't you worried about our country's safety, and that's why you want us to go to war?" He said, "Yeah." Well, I said, "That's being insecure. You need to be a little bit more confident of your country and our military power, sir." It was a really straightforward discussion I had with the gentleman, but that showed me a lot that these old timers, it's like they're the ones pushing us all into war, man. They're the ones. And I don't know what happened to the hippie generation. I heard that they all turned into the business class, that the business elite. And now that's where they all went. They were all hippies then, and then they went through the 80s, and they jumped into the industrial revolution of the United States after the Berlin Wall fell. It was they all became part of the system. And there was a good film, I'm sure you've seen it. It's called SLC Punks, and it's about a bunch of young teens from Utah who were anarchists, Mohawk kind of punkers. And at the very end of the movie, a good scene that comes up, that one of these Mohawk punkers, he comes up in a suit and tie, and he walks up to one of his buddies. He's like, "Dude, what did you do that for?" Something, I'm paraphrasing because I haven't seen the movie in years. But he said, "Well, what the hell happened to you, man? You turned." And he said, "You know what? One thing I finally learned is that the only way to do any change or damage to the system is to be in the system."
Mm.
And I was thinking to myself, wow, that's exactly what happened to the hippie generation. However, the hippie generation learned very quickly that once you join the business class, to stay there and survive and keep getting paychecks, you need to keep licking ass and doing what you're told. And it's a damn shame, because that's the reason why we always wonder, wow, man, there's so much illegal shit going on in the military and the government. How come no one comes out and says anything about it? The reason why is because the majority of people, minus people like Edward Snowden or Daniel Ellsberg, um, who just say, I'm not going to risk losing everything, and my mortgage and my house and my family and everything, my reputation, to do this. I'm just going to keep walking that line. And that's where we're at. That's where we're at. And, but man, thank God, slowly people are starting to wake up, and we started this channel more or less to show respect for all of those who have really stepped up and taken on the beast, as they say, taking on the beast of reality and truth, because that's what we're here for, man. I think that's what we're gonna do our best for.
Yeah, and it's a mess, definitely a mess. So what do you think happens? We'll go through each candidate. I guess I'll go first personally. I think if Trump is elected and somehow beats not only Biden but also the media and the social media and all that, I think he continues to push this economy in the right direction. We had a 33.1% annualized gain in the GDP. So, the month of September and October.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah.
Just in that month.
Yeah, incredible. So super stoked about that. A lot of people, I think, share the same perspective of Trump. Is eventually this virus will be gone, but it won't be gone if we stay locked in at all times. So we can talk more about the virus in our other video, but it's just something to keep in mind. I think Trump is the cheerleader for economic recovery, and if he gets reelected, we're going to keep moving in that direction. And I think it's super important we do. Biden gets elected, I think we're going back to lockdowns. I think it's going to get pretty draconian, like what Whitmer's been doing, attempted like force people in their homes, and
he would hire Fauci and fire Trump. Did you see that today?
Yep. So
they're using this virus as they're so desperate, man. You know,
so what I've seen repeatedly, which is exhausting for me, is there's a lot of even celebrities basically saying that the 220,000 people who've died thanks to this virus are entirely because of Trump. But if you go back to the early part of this virus, like in March, Dr. Birx said, even if we do a really, really, really good job, even if we did everything perfect, we would still see above 200,000 people die. So that's just saying Trump did a good job. But what do you think would happen if either are reelected, or Biden was never elected? Either are back in power, I guess.
If Biden gets elected, I can tell you I'm actually moving out of the country. I'm moving to Canada. Yeah, I'm not gonna put up with it anymore. I've got a kid, so I've got to think of him, man. And Biden will literally destroy this country, because he will let Kamala Harris, who's a retard, actually control this puppet strings. And and you know what? A lot of people are going to control his puppet strings. So I can't really say too much about just Kamala Harris, but it's worrisome, because, as many people know, Biden, he supported the crime bill, 1994 crime bill. He was very
Called it the Biden
adamant.
bill.
He was adamant about going to Iraq, to war in Iraq, which was the reason why I was a Democrat in the beginning, because I was against the Iraq war. And what's crazy is that he's also big on big pharma. He lives in the region of the United States that is a predominant monopoly of pharmaceutical corporations in I think 100-mile radius. It's insane. And he's friends in bed with China and Russia, although he's constantly attacking Trump for doing just that. And what do we all learn? that when someone is criticizing you for something, it's most likely because they're the ones doing it. They're just trying to reverse the table and muddy the water. And that's technically what the Liberal Party has been doing to Trump for a long time. They're doing some shady stuff, and they're calling Trump on their own shady stuff, although he's not the one doing it. Um, it's almost kind of like what little children do in junior high when they're trying to get each other in trouble.
So, what if Trump's reelected?
If Trump gets elected, if Trump gets elected, that's a good question. I really don't have any worries if he gets elected. If he gets elected, I can actually kind of relax. I feel like if he gets elected, we'll be okay. In the beginning, I didn't like Trump. To be honest with you, still, there's a lot of things I don't like about him. But like what you said, bro, he's getting things done that he promised he would do. I've seen drone footage of the wall. It's amazing. From sea to shining sea, dude. It's literally going from Mexico's Bay all the way to San Diego.
400
It's
miles already
awesome.
done.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are saying that he wouldn't do it. He did it. He's doing it. They also said he wouldn't succeed with North Korea, and look what he did. He immediately and single-handedly just being cool, just bringing the cult of personality of Trump
Cult of
to the table.
personality.
Yeah, that's all he did, man. And he was able to turn an enemy who has nuclear powers into a neutral force, a neutral entity.
Yeah.
That's outstanding. How the heck can he not get the Nobel Peace Prize just for that?
Yeah, and he
You know?
signed 5 peace deals this year.
Well, yeah,
yeah,
the Middle
Middle
East
East.
peace deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and that North Korea is my favorite example of Trump and who he is, because Obama said the biggest concern, the biggest threat to the United States is North Korea. That's the biggest threat. No one can ever do anything about it because the Kim family, they're all crazy.
Yeah.
But then Trump walks right in, shakes his hand, and he brings him to the White House, drives him around D.C. So it's just like Reagan. Soviet Union fell through diplomacy. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. It's no different. It's just, I think, what people fail to see is what people in these second and third world countries and these nations that have authoritarian dictators see. These dictators don't respect the doublespeak of the likes of Obama. They see it from a mile away, and Trump is a straight shooter, and I think they respect that, and I think that's why the United States has been gaining a lot of respect from these nations with dictators.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, I don't know. Obama, though, he was an actor. That's all he really was. Trump is a player. That's kind of what it comes down to. Uh, Obama, that's what he was. He was a figurehead. He was a talking head. He really didn't do anything. He was literally like every other president, just controlled by other interests. Trump is not controlled by other interests, with exception to Israel, probably. Through Kushner. Kushner is very tied to the Israeli mafia. I mean, not Israeli mafia, but you know what I mean.
The Zionists.
Yeah, I don't know if I want to call it that, but
I don't mind. I prefer the peace in the Middle East versus Palestine and Israel constantly bombing each other. And I feel
the
like
thing
Trump,
is though, is that Hamas and the leadership in Palestine has said flat out that although there is certain countries in their Muslim Brotherhood that are going towards peace, that that they don't accept it, because unless the Muslims are returned their land, no matter what.
Wow.
That's a hard bargain, man.
Yeah, well,
It's
and
not
that's
happening.
right.
It's just not happening unless they get wiped, unless the Jewish people get wiped out, and that's not happening.
Yeah, we don't want that either. Yeah, that's for our audience, those of you who might not know, the Middle East is somewhere where the entire world sees as a place that will never see peace, because both the Judeo-Christian believers and those who are Muslim believe that Jerusalem is like the holy land of like both belief systems, and unfortunately, it's led to half a century of nonstop violence. Some of which thanks to the United Nations and their involvement in the creation of Israel. Um, but yeah, it's going to be an area of dispute until Palestine and Israel can coexist, and that may or may not ever happen.
Which is it's kind of how I see the immigration debate to be. Rather than the people in Mexico or Guatemala or Honduras just attempting to take back their control of their country, they literally ship entire families here,
Yep.
and expect us to fix their problems for them.
Mm-hmm.
It's sad, man, but that's not possible. We can't solve the entire world's problems. It's like it would be like thousands of homeless people knocking on your front door and coming in and saying, "Hey, man, you have to take care of us." Bro, I want to take care of you, but I can't.
Can't take care of everyone, right?
There's a feasibility line that has to be drawn, folks.
Mm-hmm.
I'm half Hispanic, half Italian, and I've got a lot of immigrants in my family,
Mm-hmm.
and we all get along. It's not a self-hating thing. We just realize that you need to work for what you have. You need to earn what you make, and a lot of people that are from just over the border, they think they could just hop on over, make some money, send it back over to their foreign land, and then not learn the language here, not want to become a citizen, and then not want to settle down here. The majority of people I've spoken to who are good friends or acquaintances alike have told me that the majority of people that come here from the South do not plan on staying here. They come here to work. They send all their money back as what's called remittances back to their families who are paying their houses and their bills back there, who, by the way, have big houses and properties back in Mexico. I mean, big.
Mm-hmm.
You can own a lot of land in Mexico,
Mm-hmm.
a lot. And they all do. And they all have huge family estates. And it's fantastic. But they come here to work, they make the money, they send it back there, they save here, and then they move back there and they settle down back there. They're not doing anything to help and promote our country. They're just coming here to use it. And that's where my disconnect is.
Right.
As a Chilean Italian
Mm-hmm.
immigrant or child of immigrants,
Mm-hmm. And Mexico is not alone in countries that have citizens who do that in the United States. But that just brings us another good point on Trump, which a lot of people tend to not understand, is they think, oh, he's so racist. He wants to just build a wall. He just wants to keep all the Mexicans out. And him building a wall isn't to say no Mexican can come in. It's trying to keep Mexicans safe, because thousands of people die crossing the border every year. And the wall there would be a wonderful deterrent for lives being lost trying to cross the border. And
yeah, he's not doing to save Mexican lives though. But I'm just going to be flat out. But what's smart is that what he's doing is finding a benefit for the other side as well, which is why Mexico has decided to send, I think it's 15,000 troops to their border to help secure it along the southern ends, while the northern end builds the new fencing.
right.
Well, so
Yep.
they say that Mexico isn't paying for it, but they are paying for security of the building of it, and that is in and of itself helping to pay for it, because then it doesn't require the United States government or the United States military to pay for security of building that. Therefore, some of that cost is being consumed by the Mexican government, which is outstanding, because what you're just saying now, Tyler, is that Mexico does see a benefit to helping them build a wall.
Right. And
That's
that's
important.
yeah, and I think it's just been a reoccurring theme of Trump's presidency. He's been may have this rhetoric, but he's still able to do these amazing deals because the art of the deal. I know he didn't exactly write the book, but the point is that um, I think personally that government should be run more like how Trump is running it versus be nice to everyone and we're going to create this well-known government and forget about sovereignty, open up the borders. That's not how you protect your citizens, and I think Donald Trump understands that. And even if he's not a conservative, he's what he's doing is been pushing our country into a healthier position economically and with the whole immigration challenge as well.
I mean, you want to talk about a healthy direction? You're absolutely right, man. Have you noticed it's weird because when I watch YouTube, I look for news stations to watch, alternative and mainstream. But then whenever I have it on autoplay, it immediately goes to a next video, and the next video is always a Trump rally live.
Mm-hmm.
So by accident, and lately, I don't know why the algorithms are doing that, but by accident, I'll be listening to an entire rally of his while I'm cleaning the house or helping my son with his work or cooking food, and I'll literally hear him say the exact same thing about his anti-war stance in each rally. He talks about how we shouldn't be in other countries with our military, that we should all bring them back home. He says it in every rally, to a rally of thousands of Republicans who, if you don't remember, only 1 decade ago were hardcore war hawks, all Republicans in this country behind
Mm-hmm.
Bush.
Everyone except Ron Paul.
Everyone except for Dr. No.
Yeah.
And Mike Lee.
Oh yeah.
And Ted Cruz. And Kerry Benevolio.
Talking about a decade ago.
Yeah.
But that you're just rifling your record of people you helped get elected.
Yeah, because they were all anti-war.
Yeah.
And that's who I stand behind. Anti-war, constitutional, freedom-loving candidates. And that's why I supported Tulsi Gabbard. She was a Democrat. That's why I supported Kerry Benevolio. He was a constitutional conservative. That's why I supported Mike Lee, Ron Paul, Obama, because he was anti-war. I down the list, bro. That's why I hated Bush. I'm a Republican, man, and I still hate Bush. He fucked up our country, man.
Yep.
But it wasn't him. It was Dick Cheney, and then it was Donald Rumsfeld, and it was Paul Wolfowitz. It was that entire group of.
Well, Halliburton, they made billions of dollars off of it.
Oh man, did you know? I think I told you the other day. No, not the other day. About a year ago, I was walking down Van Nuys Boulevard, and it was by the Walmart over there in Panorama City. And I saw a Halliburton truck in a parking lot.
What?
Completely by itself. Yeah, it was totally random, dude. And it was
I remember that.
They had Halliburton on the side of it. Full transparency, we might have to censor this, but I walked right up to the car and hawked a big ass loogie right on their windshield and right on their door window, dude. And I was like, what are these disgusting crooks doing in my city? That's how I felt. And then lo and behold, I come to find out that in the Pasadena Mountains, the Altadena Mountains, whatever they're called, Halliburton actually owns that entire mountain because they're drilling oil there.
Wow.
The mountains just north of Pasadena and Altadena and Glendale.
Wow.
Did you know those mountains right there that separate Kern County or Orange County? Or Kern County.
Yeah. That's a great topic to talk about.
If it's on my mind and I'm passionately talking about it, I'm going to talk about it so that we can at least have it recorded.
All right. So if you haven't decided yet, we hope that our discussion here, if you've listened to it, thank you for doing so, has informed you and helped you in your decision. Catch us here anytime on this channel.